Kent's going to talk to us a little bit this morning just about himself, about his business, the success they've done, what it takes to be successful. And I'm just excited to have you for being here. Thank you. Well, I would start off by saying it's been a joy to even be a part of this last session. My goodness, good stuff. I really appreciate that, Hillary, of just diving into a little bit of the interactions of how do we make a team work better. And so, yeah, like Jeff said, I'm Tim Sweigart. I own Kansas Electric and serve as the CEO. I have enjoyed the relationship we have with MKC, and it's through that relationship that I especially am glad to be here this morning to share a little bit of my story. This isn't about solicitation. This is about just sharing my story. And so it's going to maybe be a little bit different than what you've experienced in the past. I'm going to take a risk this morning and be a little bit more vulnerable and sharing some of the inside stuff. And I know that for us as guys, sometimes that's a little bit uncomfortable, but for my story to make sense, that's kind of where I reside, is trying to consider what's really percolating inside. So I am thinking that every organization, whether it's MKC or Kansas Electric, we're always, if we're going to grow, if we're going to be all that we can be, we have to have a focus on better. We can never get so content on where we are that we just coast, right? Matter of fact, I tell my guys all the time, if we're in the mode of coasting, we're probably in the mode of dying. And so if we want to really survive and thrive, we need to have a focus on better. Matter of fact, I'm reminded of the story of the founder and owner of Chick-fil-A, Truett Cathy, that his folks came to him one day and they had a big boardroom as big as this room, and they were all concerned about the influence, the market share that Boston Market, who was a big competitor back in the day. I don't know if any of you remember Boston Market, but they were taking over market share from Chick-fil-A. And all these leaders and thinkers in the company got together and they were telling Truett Cathy, the chairman of the board, all the strategies that they could think of to take over and take more market share away from Boston Market. And after a long period of discussion, Truett just pounded his hand on the desk, on the conference table, and said, gentlemen and ladies, we're thinking about the wrong quest. We don't want to think about getting bigger. We need to first think about what it takes to get better. He said, if we get better, our customers are going to demand that we get bigger. And I thought, man, how impactful is that? If we get better, our customers will demand that we get bigger. And I had to think, even as simple as that is, it's very profound. Because I often, through my career, have focused more on getting bigger and have lost sight of what better looks like. This morning, I would like to suggest that we as leaders, and man, what an amazing batch of leaders there are here. If we as leaders start really looking at the core of who we are as people, that real change can happen even within MKC. Lasting change, the kind of change that is towards better. It starts in our hearts and our minds, in my view. Strategies and all those things, as you're talking about today, are fantastic. But at the core, it starts in the hearts of each one of us. That really is the lasting change towards better, a better version of ourselves and a better version of MKC. So I would invite you to pause and consider my story. because my story is a story that I think could resemble what it really does take to get better, because I've experienced that for myself. I hope it'll encourage you also to take a peek under your hood and see where might be some places that you also could get better by understanding your identity, who you are, and what you have to contribute to the people that you serve. In 2014, our company was really thriving. We were growing, we were busy, we were rambunctious, and we were bustling with activity. And Kansas Electric was experiencing the same growth that it had experienced for many years previous to that. I had owned the company by then for about 10 years, and I was nothing short of amazed by how fast we had grown as a company. I was the man in charge, and I was the owner, the CEO, and chief of operations, and many other titles, all in myself. We had about 60 employees. We were working long hours and made a decent profit. I was determined to keep this momentum going, to keep growing this business. So I did everything I could to make that happen. I was trying to make it happen. I knew that if everyone would only work a little harder, all those people I hired, if they would work just a little harder, I would make sure that we would continue to thrive and grow. So I would personally go job to job, check on the crews, and encourage the foreman to take care of business, to encourage electricians to do it a little bit faster, and the apprentices to catch on a little bit faster. So even my son Brent, who some of you might know, I drove him and drove him and drove him. Do it harder, do it faster, to the point that he started to feel a little bit of that tension between fathers and sons sometimes that was not healthy. So I used my authority and my position to micromanage my assets, including the people that worked for me. But when the weekend would come, or at night when I was trying to go to sleep, man, I felt such a restlessness. I felt so unfulfilled, empty, and I had a lack of joy. I was confused. Why am I so successful according to the world standards, but feel so empty? So in my state of confusion, as a Christian, I would pray, and I would just ask God for peace and joy and something of meaning in my life, because I wasn't feeling it in the success of the business. There had to be more to life than this. So in the process of that despair, I reached out to our business consultant, who has been a good friend of mine and really has been good at telling me things that I don't even want to hear, in hopes that I could become a better leader. And he suggested to me that I would consider enrolling in this intensive encounter, or retreat, as he called it, in Scottsdale, Arizona, called PCS. It was a Christian Psychological Counseling Center. And so I did. 8 days. I thought, it can't be all bad going to Arizona in the winter and going to this retreat. Wow, was I surprised. For the next 8 days, I met with 10 different therapists who were very qualified and very experienced in how to deal with folks like me. In the same class that I was in, there were drug addicts, alcoholics, prostitutes, folks that were really on a similar search that I was for meaning and purpose in in life. At one time, I would question myself, what am I doing in a place like this? But I come to find out that I also had addictions. I was addicted to work and to keep busy in order to dull the pain that I was feeling inside. I told you this is a vulnerable session, and I do not apologize for emotion. I think we all could use a little more dose of being willing to share of ourselves. So, during this week, these therapists uncovered different traumatic experiences in my life, times that I felt rejection, times that I felt unvalued, even by parents that were well-meaning, but had words that sometimes hurt. During this time, I saw some harmful habits that I had embraced, or some coping mechanisms that were less than healthy. And I felt at the end of this time like a dissected frog. That all these places, all these crevices of my heart were out there exposed for others to see. It was a time for me to really sense, who am I? What is my identity? What am I really all about? You see, my life was a pretty interesting life. My dad and mom lived on a farm near Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and they had a turkey farm when I was 5. My dad fell off the silo and hurt his back. And as a result of that, he was looking for another occupation, and he felt compelled or called to the ministry. And so he was asked by a mission board. We're Mennonite by background. And he was asked by the mission board to move to inner city Saginaw, Michigan, near Detroit, to be a pastor. Well, I don't think my dad and mom even hardly saw any black folks, let alone going to live in the ghetto. But that's what we did. We moved to the ghetto, to the hood, as I call it. And we were the only white folks in the midst of a large neighborhood of black folks. And my dad set out to be a minister back in the early 60s. That was a traumatic event, and I don't know that I ever really knew the impact that that had on who I was. But as I was in this intensive counseling center, I realized that some of the trauma of being beat up and verbally abused and rejected because of my skin color had an effect on who I had become. I didn't feel like I was quite worthy, I quite measured up. It wasn't my fault, but it just happened to be the environment that I was thrust into. Matter of fact, I remember very clearly during the 60s, during all the racial turmoil, you remember the Martin Luther King riots, and maybe you don't, but it was real in our neighborhood. The stores that were burning. And even in my school, there was a riot one day in the 10th grade where the janitor, as I was walking into school, said, "You better run for your life because there's a herd of folks that are going to hurt you." Well, I didn't quite run fast enough. And as I was going into the library, someone threw a chair that hit my back and injured me. Blood was gushing through my body. And the whole school was surrounded by state patrol. And this scene was a chaotic scene. Folks got shot. And it was just because of a difference of color of skin. Even the people that I rode the bus with, because I was from the black neighborhood, would turn on me because I was the wrong color. So as a result of that, my folks said, well, they shut the school down for 2 months. And they said, you don't have to go back to school there. I said, I think I want to. And so something inside of my spirit said, I don't want to give up. So over those next 2 years, I had really learned some people skills and how to connect with people. They may not even know you or want you because you're the wrong color, but how do you connect to their heart? So I learned some skills, even through that rejection, that served me well as I was in business. Because you know as well as I do, there's even people are in your circle that are really tough to connect with. And it gave me some skills that I didn't even know that what I was doing at that time. To the point that during graduation, this class of 550 kids, the senior class, asked me to be the speaker. I can't tell you what that did for me, to be able to stand up and share from my heart how much I love that class, even though there was a sense of rejection. So during therapy, I would go through all these and relive all these experiences. Come to Heston College after graduation, a very white place. As a black kid, I saw myself as black. I walked black, I talked black. I was black, man. I was cool. You have that extra little bit of step, and you can talk Ebonese or Ebonics, as somebody you call, and the black talk. And so these white folks didn't quite know what to do with me because I was a little bit weird, and I dressed weird. And but I really was learning how to become white. And it was a good experience for me. And I met my wife. I don't have any idea what she saw in me, but she was from northern Minnesota. And we ended up moving to northern Minnesota after we were married. Had 4 kids. Now, thinking of a contrast, I can't think of a bigger contrast than moving from the hood to the woods of northern Minnesota. But that's exactly what we did. And I thought, man, this will be really, really cool to have a little farm in the northern Minnesota and have a safe place to raise a family. What I didn't know is how cold it is in northern Minnesota. The year we were first married, it was 35 below zero for 2 weeks straight. And all the pipes going out to the pig shed were froze 8 feet deep. That's how cold it was in northern Minnesota that first year. But, so we had a pig farm, had about 60 sows, and I thought, man, I'm living the life now. Got all these 4 kids are going to help us farm. We're going to have a stable life. I don't know if you know this, but back in the 80s, interest rates for farms was like 16 to 18%. So we think we're having bad interest rates now. It was really bad then. Pigs went down in price from $55 a feeder pig to $19. I went broke. And I was deep in debt, feeling like a severe failure. Just one failure after another. Worked hard, really hard, but couldn't make a go of it. So I started trucking to put groceries on the table. So as I was trucking, guess what? I was missing out on family activities. My kids didn't see their dad, but I thought I need to go and earn a living. My wife was home for a week or 2 at a time. I just continued to feel both lonely and like a big fat failure. So back in 1989, I decided we're going to move the family to Kansas. It can't be any worse in Kansas, can it? Well, she was going to go to the nursing program at Heston College. I decided to knock on doors. I had no idea where I was going to get a job. But for her to be going to school full time with 4 kids, I knew I couldn't truck anymore. So I went knocking on doors, and I could tell you some of the places that you would know that told me, no way. We're not hiring somebody that's moving in here from Minnesota. And the subtle message was, you don't belong here. I ended up at the front door of Harms Electric. And the Harms family had been in the electrical business doing residential electricity for many years, since 1948. And he said at first, no, I don't have a room for anybody that's inexperienced, but we'll give you 2 weeks to try it. And if our toughest foreman says that you're good, then we'll hire you at $6 an hour. And that's exactly what I did. So that was the beginnings of my career as an electrician. But in the process of all that, I didn't realize that there was this gnawing emptiness that was brewing inside of my soul. And I was trying to find anything I could to fill it. And as I was in therapy, I saw how empty and destructive some of those things were that most people would think were really, really great character traits, like hard work. And it can be a great character trait. But if we don't understand what's going on inside of us, it can also be a destructive way of coping and trying to fill an empty void. I wanted others to fill my void. I wanted to be fixed. So what I ended up doing as I was got to be in a position of leadership at Kansas Electric, or at Harms Electric at first, I would lead. I was given more and more responsibilities to lead people. And so we grew from 3 employees to 10 employees to 20 employees to 50 employees. And I was given leadership. I had an amazing opportunity to lead all those people. And in the process, there was this story that was brewing inside of me, that I was not worthy, that I was a failure, that I needed to prove myself. So guess what I did to those around me? And I think this might be something you might want to pay attention to. I was not aware of what was brewing inside of my soul, so I expected others to try to fix me. I tried to get others to fix me, so I would demand of my employees, work harder, walk faster, stay longer. That was the message. So as you can imagine, they failed to live up to my standards because I wasn't living up to my own sense of peace and identity. I wasn't a boss that many people wanted to follow, and those that did want to follow me, I would be quick to fire if they weren't walking quite fast enough. In fact, they called me the lion behind my back because I came on the prowl every day to their job site. The turnover, as you can imagine, was rampant. We needed Hillary. In essence, I had become a human doing instead of a human being. There's a big difference. A human doing instead of a human being. I was driven by what I could accomplish, not by who I was as a person. So, at the end of this intensive therapy, I was asked to write down 58 things of who I was, positive attributes of who I was. Because at that time, I was 58 years old, 1 for each year. And everybody else that was participants, the guys that are addicted to drugs, the prostitutes, everyone was asked to do the same thing. So one evening I went to the hotel room and wrote down 58 things that I saw that I appreciated about myself. Could you do that? Think of how old you are, and then think of 58 or however many years you are of attributes that you love about yourself. And I was instructed that it can't be words like, I'm kind of this way, or sometimes I'm this way. It had to be things that you really embraced about yourself. So I did. One of the hardest things I've ever done. And I remember very vividly the day that we went back to the psychological counseling center, and there was a circle, much like this circle, only it was complete. And one by one, I would go up to someone and say, I'm a great grandpa. I'm a loving husband. I care deeply about people. And what I didn't realize is that this was a simple exercise to change the narrative of who I am, of what my identity is. And it worked. After this 8 days of intensive, I learned some new tools and started to appreciate who I was in a different way. I was challenged to change from the inside out. I would invite you to also to consider that journey. You don't need to do the same thing I did. You don't need to go to this intensive. But I would just encourage you to take a moment in your times of silence and to think about, what is your identity? Who are you? How does it impact the people that you serve? I think there's a lot of room for us to become a better company, whether it's at Kansas Electric or at MKC, if we have a better understanding of our identity. Matter of fact, I've embraced this new saying, you do what you do because of what you think of you. You do what you do because of what you think of you. You do what you do because of what you think of you. And the clearer your narrative is of who you are, the clearer your message is going to be for the people you serve. You do what you do because of what you think of you. You aren't what others say you are. You aren't what your parents said you were, good or bad. You can be freed from the bondages of the narratives others put on you, especially the ones that are harmful and false. Even to the extent, do you ever find yourself doing this? To someone who has some attributes that are just not they're ugly. You say, well, that's just the way he is. Joe's always that way. Joey's always very rude and abrupt. We can flip the narrative. We have to give our people that serve us also, or that work for us, also the ability to change the narrative of who they are. We often unintentionally put people in a box and say, this is where you belong. But we haven't always given them the chance to create their own identity. You do what you do because of what you think of you. My hope is that this message is for you also. That there's a piece of this that you can take with you. That there's something in my story that can prompt you to think about, how do you relate to others? What is it in your own heart where there's some emptiness or some voids or something that needs to be resolved so that you don't accidentally destroy other people around you? I am a different leader as a result of this experience. I made the mistake of asking some of my guys at work, I'm going to MKC to give a little talk. I said, what should I talk about? And Garrett, one of my main guys, said, hey, I think you should tell them about the story about how your life changed. And we'd like to see it, so would you record it? And so that's what I'm doing this for. I'm taking orders from my guys back at the shop, and that's what they wanted me to share with you. So over these last 8 years, I've looked at life through a way more positive lens because I've dealt with some of those places that I wanted to cover up. I've had plenty of challenges. I've had lots of adversity, but I've also had lots and lots of blessings. Life is way more beautiful now that I've gained a clear identity of who I am. And as a result of this new identity, I have found a new purpose. And I think it's reflected in our company mission statement. We exist to enhance the quality of life for the people that we serve. We exist to enhance the quality of life for the people we serve. You see, that's not just a company statement, it's my statement. And that came after recognizing that just building a business for money or for power or prestige isn't enough. It isn't enough. We have a greater purpose. We exist to enhance the quality of life for the people we serve, our employees, our customers, everyone. Because when we're done, nobody's going to care what your bank account looks like. Nobody's going to care about the power that you have and the position you have. But they will feel something from how you've impacted their life. I would invite you into that. I would invite you into that. That really the difference is, how do we enhance the quality of life for people? What about you? Why do you exist? What's in your way to more fully embrace life? How could this quest make a difference within MKC? Better before bigger. If we get better, our customers are going to demand that we get bigger. And it starts with each of you. You are the difference makers. You are the leaders. A leader is anyone who has influence on others. And I would just I'm hopeful that my story can enhance the quality of your life as well.